I believe there's a quote out there somewhere where I said something along the lines of, "I'm never doing a video on Metal Gear Solid 5 ever again." Well, I've got bad news for that guy, because this is what the people want. So now that we're here, what are we doing? Well, today I'm going to be completing 6 of the 12 episodes from Metal Gear Solid V that I handpicked with only suppressive equipment. Now, what does that mean? Suppressive equipment. Well, let's see. The equipment I chose for this challenge goes as follows: stun grenades, LLG gas mines, sleep grenades, smoke grenades, and stun decoys. Now, you may think that this challenge sounds pretty easy, right? Well, you're not entirely wrong, because see, I left out some key information. Every piece of equipment that I took in with me is the lowest possible level that it can be, with the exception of the stun grenades. Keeping all of these at such a low level limits the capacity I can bring into each of my missions, so at max, I only get 4 of everything, except for the stun grenades. I'll get 8 of those. Also, I challenged myself to use at least 1 of each kind of equipment on each level, and this was to prevent the spam usage of one easy to use throwable, like the decoys, and forces me to get loud with the stun grenades. Lastly, I was aiming for an S rank, not allowing resupplies, and was aiming to not be spotted at all. And I think that's about it. Let's get started. I start this one off from the checkpoint just outside the village. Having already marked nearly everyone inside, I begin my entry up to the back of the camp, hugging closely to the cliff face to my right. I took note of an enemy climbing down a nearby ladder, but I left him alone for now and kept pushing towards the rear end of the village. As I rounded the 2 buildings back here, I'm able to spot and mark one of the last remaining patrolling enemies and begin plotting my next move. I noticed the soldier who I'd passed earlier, who was on the ladder, was making his way towards me on a foot patrol, and I figured now was as good a time as any to begin clearing this place out. I tossed out one of my 4 stun decoys, hoping to hit him with the impact from it being activated, but of course, missed and settled for the alternative instead. After sending him off via Fulton and picking up the extra decoy I'd tossed by accident, I moved into a nearby building, barely getting inside before being spotted. I swapped over to my LLG mines and placed one on the ground in front of me. As I was backing up to get out of sight and out of range of the gas he was about to trigger, I kicked over some empty gas cans, which ended up startling my target. Regardless, it ultimately worked out for me in the end, and I was able to send him off after a quick scan of the area. Before grabbing Miller, I still needed to clear out the rest of the village, so I moved on to the perimeter guards. Using one of my empty magazines, I threw it in front of my next victim to get his attention, all in order to set a trap for his stupid ass. While he was over checking on the noise, I set up another LLG mine on what I thought was his post, so upon his return, he'd be knocked out cold. I stepped away from that for now, as it had a delayed fuse of sorts, and began headhunting the other 2 just down the hill. I noticed, as I was standing still and observing their movements, that my trap hadn't actually worked out as I'd planned, since the guard up the hill was back at his post and still very much awake. Oh, and on top of that, I'd accidentally made enough noise to startle one of them. I was smack dab in the middle of 3 hostiles, and I needed to think of a way to quickly get out of this. I slowly crept over to the one at the bottom of the hill and distracted him with a magazine before tossing a sleep grenade onto him and watching him pass out. I threw the magazine first because sometimes the target will just run away before the gas can actually affect them, so I found that this method of distraction was much more reliable. The dude that I just knocked out, I'd end up carrying a little further away as to not alert anyone nearby to the noise of my Fulton. And of course, it didn't matter because someone heard me anyways, and it was yet another dude I hadn't yet marked. I granted him the freedom to call it in as I went back up to where I'd laid my trap. Why? Because it actually worked. Except, not on the intended target. Either way, I was on my way over there. And after I'd chuck a sleep grenade onto the other guy's position, he'd be out cold too. But, of course, it actually rolled back down the hill and would end up knocking me out too. But once I'd woken up from my nap, I'd be briefly noticed by that still alert guard, and he was making his way over to me as I was trying to Fulton out the others. Using his chase to my advantage, I would tactfully place another LLG mine where I thought he would travel through, getting to witness my equipment in action. Once the 3 of them had flown off to join the Diamond Dogs, I had 4 of them left to secure. I went back up to the back of the camp and placed my last LLG mine in a potential enemy pathway and decided that now was as good a time as any to get loud. I tossed a decoy into one of the doorways and activated it, but none of the enemies were willing to touch it. However, after going back outside and knocking one of them out with a perfectly thrown decoy, I had attracted some more attention to my current location, and so I had to rapidly move his body out of sight, leading to me almost being caught. Thankfully, I got away and he turned his attention to my decoy. Perfect. As he was investigating, I went around to position myself behind the last one, waiting for him to be actually the last one awake. Once I was sure, I laid his ass out with a barrage of stun grenades, effectively clearing this outpost. Then I went about freeing Miller, resetting Pequod's landing zone, and finishing this mission. After spawning into an open field, I'm made aware of 2 enemy travelers walking along the nearby path. I quickly swapped over to my decoys and tossed one of them perfectly in between the 2 of them so that the explosion from the deployment would disable them both. Once they were sent off, I turned my attention to the single guard posted up on the entrance to this camp. For this dude, I hit him with a combination of Pizza Hut and Taco Bell, starting off with a smoke screen, then following it up with an LLG mine placed at his feet. As I waited for the gas to clear, I heard a Jeep stopping off in the distance, though I wasn't worried about it. He was falling right into my trap perfectly. See, he'd stopped because he'd seen my decoy and was getting out to take a better look, though he inevitably ended up stunning himself by trying to knife a balloon. Okay, so now there were a few more enemies I needed to dispatch before moving into the main base itself. The first one was in a sniper tower and was taken out by tossing a decoy at his feet, and the other was put to sleep using one of my 4 sleep grenades. Unfortunately, things get a little dicey from here. An unexpected enemy had spotted my decoy inflated in the tower and began radioing into HQ. I sat there debating what route would be the best for the given situation, but only after a few more seconds of waiting, the dude finally decided to go up the ladder and check it out. But there was a problem. His buddy was still up there sleeping. As he sat there, contemplating what he was going to do first, I decided to choose for him and sent a stun grenade his way, making this whole situation a whole lot worse. I now had 3 sleeping guards I needed to airlift out of here, and I just sent the whole base on high alert. I chose to rush over to the one sleeping across the road, but noticed I still had a squad of 3 just down the hill, and I needed to do something about them before doing any Fultoning business. But really, how could I possibly make this worse? I mean, honestly. So I began my volley of the only item I was allowing myself the most of, stun grenades. The first one I tossed out took out 2 of them instantly, thankfully, but wasted a second preemptive one because, well, it hit nobody, and a third in the same way. Of fucking course. Oh well, I still had plenty of these things, so I repositioned, hucked one more, and sent him into a daze. Okay, great. Now I just had to send all these fuckers off before they'd wake up.
Let's go gambling! Aw, dang it. Aw, dang it.
After finally getting this dumbass knocked out again, I now have more enemies pouring down the hill from inside the base. I told you it was gonna get dicey. I'd only spotted one so far, and he was on his way to check on the dude I just stunned, so I switched up to my sleep grenades and sent one out his way. Now, this dude was able to run away in time to not get put to sleep right away, and honestly almost spotted me, but this idiot ran back into the gas for some reason, knocking him out just as I was about to waste another stun. Okay, now I need to hurry the fuck up and Fulton these dudes out of here. After sending 3 of them through the wormhole, I spotted yet another enemy coming down the hill, but a quick stun sent in his direction while he was distracted would have him on his ass and me back to my wormholes. I was able to send the 4 remaining dudes up and out, and I could shift my focus up towards the main base. There were a few enemies posted up in this front entrance, so using an empty mag, I distracted them to group them up, then sent out a smoke grenade for yet another distraction, then lastly a sleep grenade for the takedown. And here's where I'm reminded of a valuable lesson. MGSV's enemies adapt to your playstyle, and at this point in the run, the enemies began wearing gas masks. Uh-oh. Thankfully, a couple stuns would take care of the 2 immediate hostiles in my AO, and I could rush in to Fulton at least one of them. Then I went over to place one of my LLG mines near another one fast asleep on the ground. And I did this because the one remaining enemy alerted by my stun grenade noise was walking right in its direction. And once he got on top of it, it did nothing. That was until I tossed over a magazine, he turned to look in that direction, then it finally go off. That's 3 more targets secured. I then climbed the rocks to get to the land bridge to rescue the hostage held up here, and also to make my way around and down to the building to the man I was really here for. I only had 1 stun grenade, 2 decoys, and 2 LLG mines left to my name, and so I needed to play this kind of smart. I was just about to toss a smoke down onto the one enemy I saw down below me, until another came strolling by, out of nowhere, and so I opted to decoy the first dude. But the second one ended up just shooting my decoy down, so I had to toss down another onto him, knocking him out too. Once they were sent into the nether, there was just 1 dude left. I only had a few smokes and 2 gas mines left in my arsenal, so my plan was to smoke his ass and plant one of the 2 mines at his feet. My first smoke, did not go as planned, but thankfully he would run into the building to hide, and I would be free to do my smoke/gas combo and finally capture the outpost. Then all I needed to do was go and get the engineer and exit the level.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
Hellbound is yet another episode where I pretty much have the majority of the facility's enemies marked from where we pick up on this mission. I began my crusade just outside the Afghanistan base camp set up for Skullface in order to keep Emmerich safe as he finishes work on the Sahelanthropus. I penetrated through the front of this base by first heading down the right side pathway as quickly as I could. I'm trying to beat both the helo flying overhead as well as the guard's rotation. As I reached a safe spot with roof cover, I took note of the enemy in front of me not wearing a gas mask and chose to hit him with one of my sleep grenades to knock him out. In my rush to send him home to the boys, I accidentally huffed a bit too much of that Diamond Dog sleep gas and passed out next to my victim. Thankfully, I've built up a tolerance to the stuff, so I'm able to wake up rather quickly and could continue securing my target. The next guard on my roster was a bit deeper into the camp at one of the small little guard posts, and I just snuck up behind him and planted one of my LLG mines close enough to trigger and got out of there before accidentally falling asleep again. When the gas had cleared, I sent him up in a Fulton and moved over to one of the larger destroyed warehouses with a sniper atop its roof. I waited for him to pass on by before heading up there, but once I'd got to him, I used another one of my LLG mines, since they're probably the hardest piece of equipment to use for this challenge, and I tried to use them whenever it was most convenient. After waking up from another short nap, I noticed another enemy had rotated just below me, and he too wasn't wearing a mask, which meant another LLG mine would be placed, and I was able to successfully recruit these 2 men to my team. Across the road from here, I saw 2 more guards with enough distance between them that I knew I'd have an easy time taking them down. But as I got to the first one, I noticed that he was wearing a gas mask. I underestimate my enemy. But in a bold move, I pulled out one of my stun grenades, tossed it at his chest, and with one single move, set the entire base on alert. Kind of. The second of my 2 targets had just begun calling in the suspicious explosion they'd heard, and so I rushed over there to try to knock him out too. But see, I tossed the stun in such a way that it ended up ricocheting off the barrel I was taking cover behind and would end up stunning me instead. After this absolute blunder, the helo sure was quick to appear overhead. All I could do was stay completely still and pray. As soon as I was clear of its vision, I got up and slowly made my way into one of the nearby buildings for some desperately needed cover. I passed through here and out to a different exit on the other side of it, and came up to an enemy who was on patrol just outside. Seeing that he wasn't wearing a mask, I felt inclined to use a sleep grenade on him. But unfortunately, he would end up avoiding my gas, prompting a stun to be necessary. As I was packing this dude up, I would get seen by a sniper nearby, but not well enough to cause any alarm. With news of a sandstorm inbound and the sniper going back to his post, I I sprinted over to his building to sneak up on him with another stun. The sandstorm was a huge blessing here, as I could be a little more liberal with my stun usage with very little ramifications. And honestly, I'm not sure how this dude on the walker gear didn't see me here. I guess the sandstorm was just too powerful. After I'd stunned and sent away 3 more dudes under the cover of this sandstorm, I moved out to the building holding Emmerich. There was just one guard positioned outside of the doors, and after a failed toss and reluctant deployment of one of my strongest tools in the arsenal, he would be gone too. Instead of going to meet Emmerich now, I instead looped around to the backside of this building to hunt the sniper posted up on a smaller building next door. And he'd be incapacitated by one of my decoys as well. And I'm about to show you why decoys are so good. See, I was able to take out that sniper, catch the attention of another nearby guard, use the sound from my Fulton to get him to investigate further up onto the roof, and then watch as he'd play foolishly right into my hand. With just 6 or so enemies left to clear the camp, and very little supplies, I needed to make every little thing count. Thankfully, Snake has incredible disc golfing skills because he's able to make this play. Now, okay, so I tried my best for a few minutes trying to lure someone else over in here in order to get the full use out of this decoy, but with no luck, I moved on, again, to the other side of the camp. The first guy I came to fortunately had no gas mask to be seen, so I'd send out a smoke first as a distraction, then hucked over a sleep grenade to finish the job. I now had 1 LLG mine, 4 stun grenades, 1 decoy, and 3 smoke grenades to my name. And from here I was able to lure 2 of the remaining guards on foot over to that building that the snipers love to sit on. I took one out with the last LLG mine I had, and the second one with a smoke screen stun combo. As the last 4 headed over to investigate the noise, I looped around to position myself behind them, launch over a few stun grenades, and knocked out half the squad. I smoked out the location at which both the stun ones now lie, as to provide me cover while I'd Fulton them up. I had just 1 stun grenade and 1 decoy left to my name. 2 walker gears stood between me and a victory here. Now, walker gears notoriously will just shoot decoys and destroy them, and you also can't just knock the rider off with the deployment, so I had just 1 chance to make this stun count. And it looks as if I had a chance. So I lined it up, pulled the pin, and sent that sucker hurling through the air. It ricocheted right off the tank just as I'd planned, and by the grace of outer heaven, it hit them both. But wait, there's still another guard? Yes, off in the distance, there's still 1 lonely guard, all alone at his post. Thankfully, I still had 1 last decoy. I sent it out, deployed it, and just like that, captured my prey. Now, this area won't say that the outpost is captured after clearing it of enemies, but trust me, I got them all. After getting to Emmerich and capturing him, I now gotta make it out of here, but not before Sahelanthropus would pay me a visit. This part needs no equipment either way. It's basically just a game of hide and seek. I would just end up right out the gate hiding under the nearest vehicle, waiting for Sahelanthropus to leave, then grabbed Emmerich and started running. From there, I just hid long enough to get Pequod to fly low enough so I could board him, do a little blasting, then I could get the fuck out.
Yes, mission complete. Boss, that was exceptional.
Okay, so first off, I heavily considered omitting this mission due to how it ended up actually playing out, but something happened that I'm not sure has ever happened before in the history of this game, and I needed to share it with y'all. So the mission started as normal, right? Snake hopping out of Pequod into some oil-slicked water, then beginning to trudge through a small portion of the African jungle, until finally approaching a ledge where he'd see his Jeep parked just down below. There were a few enemies nearby, so I took a little extra caution here and tossed a smoke into the backside of the Jeep so I could easily get in and get out unseen. Everything is going great so far. Business as usual, right? Well, I was making my way over to the Methydna oil field when all of a sudden, this happens. Well, that was something. Anyways, I guess we're starting from here now. I'd popped one of my little X-ray pills and began marking every enemy I possibly could throughout its duration. Once it worn off though, I was surprised to find that one of the guards was already on his way into the room that I was occupying, so after equipping my decoys, I'd toss one out next to the door and wait patiently. And once he'd gotten close enough, I'd activate it and send him flying to the ground. After packing him up, I found that the noise from my Fulton device caught the attention of another nearby guard, prompting him and a buddy to come up here to investigate. Now, knowing only one of these two were going to be taken down by what was left of my decoy, I'd switched on over to my stun grenades preemptively so I could quickly subdue the friend. Now, my timing was perfect, but the noise from the stun grenade brought even more attention to my location, but this was all part of the plan. I threw another decoy down at the foot of the door, popped another Noctocyanin, and began marking some more enemies as I waited for reinforcements to arrive. Sadly, even though the base was on more of an alert now, no one came to investigate, so I opted to lure them here instead. Now, I got extremely lucky here as I was able to take out both of the incoming guards I lured over here with just the expansion of my rubber snake, though it was a pretty close call. But now I had to get the rest of my use out of it, so I found another fool willing to fall for one of my synthetic tricks. I thought, after all that this was all I was going to get out of this small little room, and was just about to make my exit, until, out of the corner of my screen, I saw another smooth-brained hooligan running in my direction. At this point, I felt that I was abusing the hell out of these decoys, but I only had one left, so I was going to have to switch things up here soon regardless. And after two more willing participants were down to play my little game, I was able to secure a decent chunk of this outpost guards from just this room, and I could finally head outside to get some fresh air. From here, I moved out towards the front side of Mfinda to take out the one guard watching over it with one of my stuns. Since this made a decent amount of noise, I chose to go the long way around the outside walls of Mfinda as to loop around and flank them from the other side. Upon reaching another open gate, I'd spot and coaxed a straggling guard over to my location so I could quickly stun him with a bang. No, that's not right. I meant bang him with a stun. But this created a problem. See, there were two others that I didn't see nearby who'd heard the loud noise from the stun grenade, and they were now moving in my direction. But 3 stuns later, and I was back to relative ease. After sending the triplets off to school, I turned my attention to the Lone Ranger posted up on the outskirts. I needed to start finding ways to use my other equipment, or else all of this was gonna be for nothing. I noticed this dude had no gas mask equipped, so I knew what needed to be done. I chucked on over a sleep grenade at his toes, and this dude whips out a shield as if it was going to protect him from the fumes. And that shit was funny to witness. As I was looking for a way over to my fast asleep future ally, I came across another lone wanderer who would be a great addition to my crew. My sleep grenade aim failed me on the first attempt, and after that blunder, I would just give up and told him I'd be back for him later. One Fulton later, and I was back on the prowl. Luckily, as I moved towards the oily water separator tank, there were 2 future friends in front of me. One of them was wearing a gas mask, and so I'd need to use a stun on him, but the other guy, sleep was in his future. I smoked the both of them out to disguise my real intentions, then sent one stun care package and another asleep. I was able to Fulton out the 2 sleeping gentlemen before anyone saw what had happened, but the noise certainly had them on their way. In reality though, it was just one guy, so he'd get one of my patented DD stun grenades tossed at his feet, and he'd be off to join the others. There were now just 2 guards remaining upright in this outpost, and I was getting a little worried. I'd realized that I hadn't used any of the LLG mines in here yet, and both of these guys could be wearing gas masks. But, as luck would have it, the first one I'd come across was naked on the face, and I could simply smoke him out before sneaking up on him and deliver the goods. I tried to do the same with the very last guy, not realizing that he actually did have a mask on, and almost threw away this run right then and there, but I was able to dive away undetected and send 2 more stuns in his direction, hitting him with the second one. Now that this outpost was officially captured, I could use the blast arm to destroy the oily water separator tank and left the rest of the way out of there on foot. surprisingly not running into any walker gears on my way out.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
For this episode, I'm fortunate enough to be able to spawn at the top of the massive rock that towers over this entire encampment, so that's pretty nice. My objective here is to secure or destroy all the walker gears inside this abandoned village, but first, you know the deal. I gotta clear out the enemies. I've reset on this mission so many times that I've now pretty much got this down to a science. The first order of business upon spawning in was to equip my decoys and prepare myself for a perfect toss that would end up knocking out 2 enemies at once. Now, obviously, this ruckus would catch the attention of the surprise third guard posted up here, so I hurried down and off the boulder I was atop to get down and Fulton these guys before he'd have a chance to find them. Getting the first one up and away was easy enough. It was the second one who gave me problems. Partially due to Snake's desire to test drive one of the legendary pieces of machinery. But I got off and over to the second passed out guard and sent him off before nearly walking into enemy sightlines. Twice. Great. Now there were 2 guards investigating the area, and I'd found myself right in the middle of both of them. I knew the one heading through the tent was more than likely going to fall into my decoy trap, so I focused on the guy coming up the hill. Not sure of this guy's loadout, I took a chance and lobbed over a sleep grenade, and it was a miss. He had a mask on. I made a bold decision to go loud right here, and ended up tossing a couple stun grenades on the 2 down the hill. I doubled back to ship off the guard I initially labeled as the third one, and while I was over here, tossed a few sleeping grenades even further up the hill where a gang of enemies were now all bunched up. This was another gamble, but I knew I'd at least get one of them. I ran down the hill to Fulton the 2 I'd just stunned, then turned up to a spectacular surprise. With my 2 sleep grenades, I managed to put 3 of the 4 guards up there to sleep. I'm guessing number 4 was wearing a gas mask. As I crested the hill, I had a stun cocked and ready, launched it into the tent he was occupying, then went about my business collecting the soldiers up like Pokemon. 2 estranged enemies were just down the other side of this hill from me, and they were the next on my hit list. I knew I hadn't used any LLG mines just yet, as well as 0 of my smokes, and I also took note of how one of them wasn't masked up. So I tossed a smoke on him and a stun onto the other. Then I rushed down there to use the mine on the one distracted with the smoke. As I packed these 2 up into my wormhole, I saw that 2 more roaming enemies were on their way into the camp from a bit down the road. I quickly ran to get another stun off on another lone enemy and rescue the nearby hostage. 3 of the remaining guards rushed over to the location of my last thrown stun, only to be bombarded by a swarm of plastic snakes. 3 down, 2 to go. As I'm over there trying to Fulton off my new recruits, I tried my luck on some stun grenade throws, but both of them proved to be failures. I went back to attaching balloons to bodies before realizing I had a better view of the 2 left standing, and with 1 final stun thrown, and an extra for good measure, they'd be blasted into paralysis, and the outpost was captured. But there were still 2 more incoming, so nothing like a quick smoke screen into a sleep grenade to make short work of them. After packing everyone up, as well as the walker gears, the mission was now over and I could leave the hot zone.
Amazing. Mission complete. That right there is why you're the best, boss. The one and only.
On to the last episode of this video, C2W. As it's fairly early on in the game, this mission's actually pretty simple to complete. I'm spawned in on the northern side of the outpost and begin my push by all-out sprinting around the sightline of the man operating the spotlight. As I round the corner, I swap over to my decoys, tossed one at his feet, and deployed it as soon as I could, sending him flying to the ground. I went over to scoop up his body and relocate him because I knew it was too hot of a zone to risk a Fulton. When I did this, I was sussed out by a different guard on rotation, but this was all part of my plan. I tossed the unconscious dude over into the shadows and went back to set my LLG trap for that incoming guard. As I was sending off the first dude, I watched as my trap worked out flawlessly, and I could go collect another new friend. I saw that there was a potential opportunity for a double KO with yet another decoy, so before sending this guy off, I tried to accomplish just that. Unfortunately, I missed both of them, since I didn't have a clear view of where I actually was throwing it. So I instead grabbed my buddy and took him up the hill and out of sight so I could send him home to the boys. I'd continue around this hill to get over to a small overlook into the camp, and I noticed that the 2 guards I just triggered with my decoy were actually focused on an entirely different one. The first one I threw. Weird. I left them alone to do whatever they were doing and hopped down to get back into the camp. I snuck up towards the upper part where there was just one enemy on patrol, and with another decoy thrown and deployed, he's mine. One of the 2 traveling idiots managed to get himself stunned on one of my decoys by trying to disable it, and his buddy was just working on waking him up before I'd throw another stun grenade his way and put his buddy on his ass. One more for good measure, and the initial one would be back down. The 4 remaining enemies were taken down pretty much in series, with a combination of a couple sleep grenades, 2 stun grenades, and a final decoy to cap it all off. After I went about collecting all my future diamond dogs, I could punch the comms equipment into oblivion, then leave the hot zone on my Jeep, wrapping up this half of the challenge.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.
I hope you're all enjoying this run so far. I have 6 more episodes locked and loaded, and if you want to see those 2, let me know in the comments. I'll keep it rolling. That's all for today's video. Thank y'all for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye-bye.